2 days ago, they imposed an Internal Security Act. This allows police to impose curfews, to restrict the movement of protesters, and to take a hard line, effectively, when they try to break into the ministries or force their way into the ministries. So on Monday, the protesters, when they fanned across the city before this act was imposed, they congregated around the finance ministry and worked their way in, and they now occupy the finance ministry. Thousands are using that as a base. The government is intent on making sure that doesn't happen again with the other ministries. So they've imposed this tough security law. So outside the other ministries, there is some police presence. So the government is trying to walk a fine line at protecting its institutions, while at the same time not trying to provoke the protesters. The momentum for these protests is clearly growing and not slowing by any means. In Thailand, we've seen protests of this sort in 2010 and in 2000, anti-government protests, that is, in 2010 and in 2008. Typically, they will build over a number of days, if not weeks, and often end in some sort of climactic sort of episodes involving violence of some sort, or at least confrontation. These aren't the greatest headlines for a country that relies on tourist dollars as Thailand does. But even though Thailand is well known for its beaches and resorts and so forth, tourism actually, in the overall scheme of things, doesn't contribute anywhere near as much to the economy as manufacturing and consumer spending. And those two big areas really, for the most part, are unlikely to take any kind of significant hit, if a hit at all. So for the most part, the economy is fairly well insulated from this kind of instability. In the longer term, it can have some impact in terms of deterring investors who might not like to have their corporate headquarters set up in a city that goes from one bout of instability to another every few years. So in the longer term, it really can hurt Thailand, and it has. It's one of the reasons why Thailand perhaps hasn't really developed as much as it could have over the past decade. There's basically been on-off political instability going on since 2005, almost every year. Yeah, this is the big question. I mean, is there an end game? The consensus at the moment seems to be that the protesters are trying to push the government into a corner. The courts in 2008 disbanded two governments that were allies of Thaksin, and as a reminder, his sister is now in power. So we can't really exclude the possibility that the courts could again disband a Thaksin-allied government, which is such as the one in power now, using as a pretext the corruption allegations that are surfacing right now in this parliamentary debate. Another possible outcome could be if there is a sort of a fairly significant violence on the streets, that the military could come in and use that as a pretext to stage a coup. Effectively, that's what happened in 2006. Another scenario could be that Yingluck, the prime minister, could call an election. She has considerable support in the north and northeast of the country, which are very vote-rich regions. One thing that is worth bearing in mind is that on December 5th is the king's birthday, and the king he's revered in many parts of the country, if not in the country as a whole. And the king's birthday, the protesters who are now in the streets may not want to have violence going on during the king's birthday. So some see that as a date that's sort of a deadline. Whatever action has to take place should take place by then.